last session of FutureFest today, and I have some ripping entrepreneurs to introduce you to. And we're going to talk you through like product development through to launch. And I think, without foreshadowing too much of the content, maybe debunk the myth that, the idea that you have is the one that you launch with. And maybe talk a little bit more to that scenic route, or what prototyping and how getting feedback changes things with an idea from going from concept to reality. Before we do that though, I want to tap back into our Entrepreneur's Odyssey, which we've been moving through different parts of today in different activities. And the last session we focused a lot on the value proposition. So we were talking about what can we create as a part of our idea that will make it unique, interesting and different, and more than anything else, focusing on that word of compelling. What will make our idea compelling so that when other people hear about it or they see it, they really want to engage in it because they're excited by it. And so now we're moving into, after tackling that, the next phase of our Odyssey, which is looking at, well, how do we make sure that this idea is viable? That it's actually something that we can pull off. And to do that, I want to talk to the power of a pivot by highlighting maybe some super famous examples of services and products or businesses that you guys have probably used, or your parents have used, or people have used, and just some visual representations of how it doesn't necessarily go in a linear fashion from ideation through to concept launch. And so the first one that I want to talk about is Angry Birds. And this is a really clear visual, if you check it out, of having to move through failure, particularly through to getting some feedback and some significant pivots before the game that we get to play comes to reality and is in our hands. Like, it's certainly not the first product or the first game that these guys designed. And you can see the crazy amounts of failures that these guys had before they actually stumbled across the successful game that Angry Birds is today. The next one I want to talk about is a platform that I'm sure most of us use. Our young people from before talked about their Instagram handles. You can also follow us at Future Anything on Instagram, and our entrepreneurs that I'll introduce you to in a second will also probably speak to their socials, and we'll push those out as well. It is a huge platform that's now owned by Facebook, but it certainly didn't start in the same fashion. And so I'd highly encourage you to have a little bit of a walk down memory lane of how Instagram was iterated and changed and shifted and pivoted to be the huge social platform that it is now. The next one we've got is like Airbnb, again, like a company that started with just a couple of people rocking up to a venue to see whether it worked. Founders almost went bust before they designed it, and now stumbled across something that has completely revolutionized the accommodation sector. Before it was hotels that were obviously the main accommodation provider when people were traveling, and now I would argue that certainly for me and a lot of people I know, that they would rather stay in somebody else's home in an Airbnb than actually pay for a hotel. In a similar way that Uber has revolutionized ride sharing as opposed to the taxi market. Incredible organizations that have actually changed the very fabric of the way that we engage with certain types of services that have been around for decades. And the last one that I would encourage you to check out is kind of starting a startup, and you'll see this very windy route between having an idea and then testing the idea and prototyping the idea and then getting feedback multiple times, seeking as much feedback as you can, and using that feedback as a catalyst to change the idea, listening to your consumer, to your customer, to your client, finding out what is it that they really want, and the power of having to park your ego to really take that feedback on board in order to shift this product or service that you're building into something that really solves a problem for the people that you want to be paying you money, I guess. So again, just talking about that power of a pivot, but more so than that, I think it's the power of feedback. So we can't pivot without actually asking for feedback beforehand. And the best way to do that is with these three simple questions. So it's taking your idea to somebody and going, hey, this is my idea, and telling them about it. What do you like about it? What don't you like? What would make this better for you? Those three simple feedback questions can be powerful vehicles for you getting some really tangible stuff that you can use in order to shift your product into something better for the people that are going to be using it. Now, in order to do that, we have to park our ego and we have to listen to the person in front of us. We also have to make sure that we're recording all of that feedback, because it's really important to collate it and see, well, what's coming up a lot, and maybe what's anomalous or random feedback that doesn't necessarily resonate. Because if you're hearing the same piece of feedback from lots of people over and over again, it would be really remiss of you to ignore it. But sometimes we get really divergent or random feedback that isn't necessarily reflective of what everybody else thinks. But we can't identify that as random unless we've sort of collated all of that feedback together and we can look at it in its entirety. So we're going to throw to you now and give you 3 minutes. And in that 3 minutes, we want you as a team or as a class to kind of work on as much feedback on the idea that you've got at the moment, asking those 3 questions about the idea. What do we like about the idea? What don't we like? What might make it better? You've got 3 minutes and then we'll be back with our guests. Welcome back, guys. I hope you had the opportunity to chat to some of your peers, classmates, teachers, anybody else in the room, and you've asked them what you like, what they like, what they don't like, and what would make that idea better. And I couldn't encourage you more to use those 3 incredible tools, those feedback questions, to seek as much feedback as possible. Don't be afraid to ask the question because you don't know what glimmer of gold you'll elicit from having that conversation with somebody else. But it is my great pleasure to introduce our final 2 entrepreneurs of our Future Fest Day, and 2 people that have been long-time supporters, friends, mentors, catalysts for the Future Anything program. These guys have stepped up and given up their time year in and year out to be part of this program and provide their story as a catalyst to help other young entrepreneurs to solve problems that matter to them. And we're so grateful for their time in being here today to chat to you guys. Makara and James, thank you so much for being here and giving up your time.
Nick. Yeah, anytime.
To save me reading your long bios, which are extensive, maybe can you just tell our students a little bit about who you are and what you guys do? And Makara, do you mind kicking off for us?
Yeah, sure, of course. Hey everyone, so excited to be here and be a part of this program. My name is Makara, or Mix is the nickname, M-I-K-S, and I run a social enterprise called Mix Chai. So we find ethical, organic, delicious chai. We have 2 flavors, original wattle seed. We sell all over the world and we fund suicide prevention. So mental health is the impact I'm really passionate about making.
Yeah, thank you. I also have purchased said chai and love it, and took it on holidays with me and gave it to everybody who raved about the chai. So it was super tasty stuff.
Thanks, Nick.
Not to take away from the amazing work that you do, James, but
It's
Makara,
not chai. It's not chai. It never will be chai. I'm too focused.
I can't eat your product.
But
No,
nor should you. I don't encourage it. It's not a good idea.
Tell me a little bit about you, Dr. James.
Sure. Hey guys, my name is James Fielding. I am the CEO and founder of a company called Audira, and we are addressing the hearing health issues in our society by putting a hearing test inside a world-class pair of headphones and tailoring the sound of those headphones based on your hearing test. Because everybody hears differently, everybody's left ear is different from their right, but normal sound products are a one sound fits all, so we provide a personalised sound that can cater for the needs of every individual, whether they have hearing aids, cochlears, severe loss, mild loss, just health conscious. We provide that personalised sound to improve their experience.
Yeah, awesome. James, I know you guys like a little bit about your journey, obviously, and what I'd love to talk to both of you about today is the idea that you're pitching now, or the business that you're pitching now, the one that you started with, and is the product that people can buy, the Audira headphones that exist in the present day, the same headphone that you first launched with? And I know you've brought some toys to show us as well.
Yeah, so you let me know when it's toy time.
Oh, it's always toy time, my friend.
Okay, very good. So in essence, no. We were a group of doctors. I'm a medical doctor by trade, and we got given MBAs in medical school to try and fix the public health system. So our original product was going to be a hearing test device just to make some beeps, see what you hear, and then move on. And we just didn't feel that that was going to create the drive and the change that we wanted, because getting a hearing test is tricky of its own right, but it's just a piece of information. It's not going to change your life. So we decided to pivot away from a purely medical product to focus on enhancing your experience today. So we originally had a laptop idea, a few electronic engineers, we set up some profiles, and it was generic headphones plugged into a laptop. Can you make a beep? Can you make the sound different? And then what we did was we found my favorite headphones at the time from a company called Sony, which you might have heard of. They make some tech. And we essentially just tore them apart. And we put our smarts onto a little chip and we plugged them into the back of these headphones. And you can see we've debadged them, which is pseudo-ethically dubious, but with no intent to sell.
In other words, don't do this at home.
Yeah, don't tell
sell
people
them at
they're
home.
yours, even though you know and they know that they're Sony. But first step was, can we get this tech and this concept from a laptop into the pair of headphones that we wanted to build? And so we tore apart these Sonys, and this is called a PCB for all my tech heads out there, and we put our smarts on one of the tiny little chips in the middle, but let Sony do the rest of the work. Because they're really great at making headphones. We wanted to be really great at changing the sound and doing the test. So our job was the smarts, and that gave us the focus. Then we went up to Shenzhen and we got our hands on a
In
pair
China,
of these beauties.
for those playing at home in China.
Yeah, in Shenzhen in China, which is where everyone gets all of their stuff made. If you want tech, you go to Shenzhen, you hang out for a week and get whatever you like. And we were talking to some firms here in Australia, and it's a big job, and engineering, and geez, 12, 24 months, probably a couple $100,000. Went to Shenzhen, came back a week later with these that had our tech in it. And they were very cool because they did what we wanted, and we could start, as Nick was saying before, asking people. So we say, close your eyes, don't look at them. They're not going to be this, but what they do, does that interest you? Does that improve your experience? And that was stage one of the prototype.
So really it was about not making it pretty, but actually the functionality.
Yeah,
like,
does
it do what it needs to do? Yeah.
MVP.
Yeah.
And you can see the wires hacking out. So this little connector connects it to that little chip that we had, but we'd condensed it into something that you can put on your head, do the concept, and give us feedback around our part, which was the smarts. And once we got the feedback, got some investment, got up and running based on this, because I put it on the right person's head, and he said, oh man. I went, yep. And he gave us a few $100,000 and we were off to the races. And then we did the next one to get ready for a Kickstarter campaign, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. And I call this one Lipstick on a Pig. So it's great, it's ours, it's got our little logo on it. It says Audira stamped at the top. It said Audira AO1 there in paint. But you can see that it's faded, it's worn, it's kind of busted, they're cheap, they're plastic. And I sold a few thousand of these on Kickstarter, but instead of delivering people this, I ended up delivering people this. No paint, nothing fades, nothing wears, everything is embossed, it's aluminium, it's aircraft grade, battery life is 50 hours, not 10 hours, because the people who trusted us bought it, and I essentially spent the next 12 months of absolute chaos in the inventor's dilemma to bring people something I was truly proud of. Because this was my grandma and my friends and our community and doctors and everyone. And so Lipstick on a Pig did the job and it got it done, but I wanted to bring people these ones that are beautiful and can last and will travel and are a quality tool, because the perception of the quality of the device goes a long way to encouraging people about how good it is, right? So if you give people that, it does the job, but then it breaks, right? And you go, oh, if this is so great and the tech is so good and it's really going to help me, why is it so flimsy? So we stepped it up a notch. And then, part of prototype development, I made these beauties. And this was part of some feedback from a store in the UK called Harrods. And they make
Which I've had
luxury
scones
goods.
at, or scones.
Yes, scones with
Scones,
jam,
yes.
of course.
Continue.
And probably a chai,
I
I would imagine. And
Not as good as the chai I can get here.
horrible. Harrods chai just pales in
Terrible
significance.
chai.
Yeah. But what we had was a really great product that we charge about $400 for. And when we took it to the group at Harrods, they said, that's really great, tech's interesting, it'll fit our demographic. Can you put some crocodile leather on it and make them 2,000 pounds instead? Because that's what appeals to our customer base. So we said, yep, no worries, but how do you feel about kangaroo leather? It's sustainable, it's the world's only sustainable source of leather, you know, roadkill or runway. They think it's fancy, but you can get really high quality kangaroo leather and no one puts it on products that go against the skin. It's in kangaroo boots, Nikes, all that sort of stuff. Pack of leather, an hour north of here at the coast, sourced this incredibly high quality leather. And so we made single precision machined aircraft grade aluminium 2,000 pound kangaroo leather headphones, and they didn't buy a single one of them. But I get them now, which is great because that's what it's all about. But that was part of that feedback process. We asked them, we adapted, we went the extra mile. The guys that were running that lost the contract with Harrods, and so it kind of went back to the beginning. It's those personal relationships. We met the head buyer, he thought this was a super cool idea. I thought it was a super cool idea, so we just kind of cracked on. And then it didn't go anywhere. And we figured out people don't want 2,000 pound kangaroo leather headphones in Australia, so this is the only one that exists on the planet, and they're mine, which is great. And then the final little piece in terms of prototyping and lipstick on a pig, this one is still lipstick on a pig, and this is how we secured the government contracts to supply our headphones to those in need on the Hearing Services Program, Departments of Veterans Affairs and NDIS. So there are programs in Australia that will meet the needs of people with a disability, and they wanted to make sure that the device was compatible no matter what your tech was. So it couldn't be smartphone reliant, it couldn't be Bluetooth TV reliant, because there are demographics and people who don't have that technology. So if you're going to be supported by the government, you have to support a wider range of people. So we needed to make sure our tech would connect with any TV no matter what. So we use this little transceiver, and it is a pretty stock standard product, but we just made it much sexier. You know, it was grey and matte and all that sort of stuff. So nice branding, nice and clean package, and now we sell our headphones, having come full circle from medical device into consumer, Kickstarter, launch in China, Amazon, chaos, to now selling in audiology clinics that are predominantly government funded to serve the community we set out to serve, which are people with a hearing loss coming into an audiology clinic to get some help. And it's great. We found our little world where they love it, and we get this incredible feedback, and it came from listening every step of the way and just stepping it up depending on what people needed and just doing what our customers needed.
Before I go to Makara and hear a little bit about the chai journey, can you tell me from being in medical school and starting to think about this idea and like the beeping to today, how long has that journey been?
I graduated med school 2014, and we started 5 companies. This was one of them in the end of 2014, and so we're now 2020, so 5 years.
Yeah, cool.
And I'd say my entrepreneurial journey is about 20 years, but at the moment, 5
The Audira
years
story.
of trying to make Audira a reality.
Yeah.
And I reckon in the last 12 months we got it right.
Yeah, okay, cool. A lot of like resilience and grit sitting behind that story to get to today.
Yeah, we might need another session about the grit. But yes, the toys, easy, just change them all along, it's great.
Makara, tell me, because I know when we met like a number of years ago, there wasn't mixed chai.
No, 7 months ago,
Yeah,
there wasn't mixed chai.
yeah. So tell us a little bit about your journey and how you now have this incredible tasting chai that's like saving lives.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I mean, there's so many parallels between James and I. So my background's actually in law and economics, and I actually worked as an economist and kind of left the corporate world about 3 years ago. And what I set out to do had nothing related to chai. My passion has always been working with young people. So all through my university and my high school days, I had the opportunity to work specifically with 15 to 17-year-olds all over the world. And we'd do things like climb Mount Kilimanjaro, to Everest Base Camp, to working in orphanages, to schools. And it was just a beautiful sort of amalgamation of cultures and learning. And that's what I wanted to do in Australia. And I grew up in South Africa, and living in Australia and getting to see a lot of Australia, I realized there's a level of poverty here that we don't talk about. And a way that could have helped solve this poverty, which I know firsthand helped me, was having someone come into communities and come from communities to empower teenagers to feel like they could achieve. Like there was so much more out there than what they were geographically constrained to. And sometimes you just needed to see what you didn't think you could be. So I actually set out wanting to work with rural schools specifically and talk to them about all things entrepreneurship. And I started in the Byron Bay region and then continued sort of west and spent about 6 months driving 40,000 kilometers.
That's a lot of kilometers.
The circumference of the earth. And I didn't even make it to Western Australia. So Australia is huge. And I worked with about 72 rural communities. And what I began to notice is a lot of these schools couldn't actually afford access to these workshops. Even $5 per student was a big ask. And they didn't get a lot of these opportunities coming through their towns. They were very keen. So this is how the chai was actually born, because chai was something I enjoyed making. I often would bring a cup to the class anyway. We'd often bond over a cup of chai. So I thought, here's a great kind of business model to fund access to these skill workshops. So that's how the chai started. And at the time, it was called Ground Chai. So this feeling of being grounded and connected, and we're all walking on the same planet Earth. And you know, we had commitments for sustainability, there's solving ethical supply chains, and compostability. And we keep those values today. And I sort of started off in Byron Bay selling this chai. But of course, Byron Bay is the place where all chai is made. And so it was actually a pretty crowded market.
Yeah.
And when I first tried to apply to markets, I was outright told, no, we already have a chai stall. We don't need to. And I was like, but it's not even about chai. Like,
My chai's better. Pick me.
Like, you know, we're funding access to skill workshops. Yeah. Like, this is what it's about. And the first sort of pivot I realized was it wasn't so much markets, but perhaps it was tied to community events where communities wanted to get behind supporting their young people. And they knew if we were stocking their tea and their coffee and doing that sort of beverage line, that meant money going back into the community. And we started to find our niche in that sort of model. And we ran that for about 2.5 years, and I reached a point where I realized I was trying to do too much. So I worked with close to 15,000 young people. I took it into the Indo-Pacific. We were working with communities in Malaysia, Indonesia, you know, Vietnam, Hong Kong. And the chai kind of took a bit of a back burner because we were relying more on government grants. The skill workshops were great. And it got to the point where I was like, I really want to scale the chai. I want to get this product up because the beautiful thing about a product is once you get the mechanisms in place, it can run without you. And it would be a great funding source for innovation for skill workshops. So about 7 months ago, I actually brought in a business partner. So I was a sole founder up until that point. And that was a huge pivot where now you have someone who has equity, who has skin in the game in your business, who is on board and you have to manage decisions with and think about how does this affect your values, the environment you're trying to create. And it was such a beneficial pivot because it meant two minds working on this, which is always better than one. And we did a complete rebrand. We went back to my roots, the fact of what chai has meant to me growing up, which is conversations with my grandmother, which is mental health space, which has been a space of stories. And actually what we are is not even a chai company, we're a storytelling company. And that's kind of the community and the vibe we create. So 7 months ago, we launched Mix Chai. And our labels had like 10 different iterations from, you know, being super sleek, trying to go for that Byron Bay chic, to now being sort of artistic inspired and appealing to like a socially conscious demographic. But we also have a gold label range for our older demographics who like that sort of luxury premium feel. And those are all the sort of little pivots we've had along the way. And now we focus on scaling the chai around the world. And COVID in particular was particularly interesting for us because we're doing events. So we were lined up to do our first trade show in Sydney. We ordered about 2,000 units of our product. We had it ready to go. COVID hit and we thought, well, how do we keep fostering connection? And I was so proud of our team where we were able to package our chai into a hugs pack where you couldn't hug anyone during this time, but a warm cup of chai is as close as you're going to get. And we made it accessible for $20 anywhere around the world. You could send a loved one a cup of chai. And that was such a beautiful gesture with these personalized notes. And it was really fun seeing the notes people were giving to each other. So that sort of pivoting was really inspiring and really exciting to, you know, be sending these packages off to America, Canada, to China with little messages from husband and wife teams who'd been separated, to cousins, to family, to friends, to best mates who, you know, couldn't get back into the country because of visas. It was wonderful to see those messages. And that's what I mean when we say we're a story company. So we sort of run this community on Instagram, we share people's stories, and the Chai funds suicide prevention in Australia, which is one of the biggest problems in our rural communities. So that's been a 3-year journey from only the last 7 months focusing on the Mix Chai brand and getting that out into the world.
Yeah, and I want to tap in because we talked about entrepreneurs, and what I love about both of your stories is the fact that the products that you have now are really, they come from your lived experiences and your passions. Like who you are as entrepreneurs and as people is so tightly bound into the product. I mean, for Mix Chai, the actual, like the ingredients and the recipe is like...
It's my grandmother's, my Aji, who, is such a pivotal role model to me, and is so thrilled that her chai is being shared all over the world and people are connecting over it. And yeah, it's interesting, Nick. It's interesting when you make a business so personal. In my case, I chose to put my nickname on it, my face. I wanted to give an identity to our chai. I wanted people to feel like they were talking to a person. One interesting insight for me has meant when we do receive feedback, I got to make sure not to take it personally. They're not attacking me. It's Mix Chai, I'm Makara, and it's a business at the end of the day. And that has been an interesting line to walk. I run 2 other businesses where I haven't used my personal branding, and it's far easier for me to take criticism for them. And it's just interesting when you put something that's so part of you out in the world, but it's my most rewarding business easily because it is a part of me.
Yeah, and I think it's really cool that you took something that you did like in the home, like, making chai as a family, and went, no, actually I can commercialize this for good. I think sometimes we forget to tap into the things that are our passions and interests, because maybe we feel like that's not a real job. Like law and commerce and medicine, like they're the real jobs.
Yes.
And I know for you, James, like music is such a big part of what you do. So Audira is that really amazing fusion of 2 things that you love, which is like health and medicine, and then also music as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting thinking about feedback, and I was listening to a Seth Godin podcast, and if you guys don't know about Seth Godin, he's a very clever guy. He started email marketing back in the day. He's written a few really good books, and he has these little 2 minutes with Seth podcasts on a thing that I listen to called Blinkist, which is essentially non-fiction books, and you can listen to them on the way, and it just sort of sparks ideas. He's thinking about it. He's got his little 2-minute snippets, and they're all very interesting. And one of the ones recently was, don't listen to the feedback. Just don't.
Controversial.
Just, that's it. If you release a book on Amazon, don't read the comments. Just don't. Because either you're going to write your next book or you're not. And I think, okay, I get that, but we're in a feedback space, right? And so I think one of the ones was, you have to leave your ego at the door, but you can't leave your dream at the door. You can't be going, oh, they don't like it, that's it, I'm out. And I take every single one of our returns personally. I know who they are, where they live, what they like, what they didn't like, what the feedback was, and anytime someone is unhappy, I was like 10,000 headphones in 12 months, and everyone that comes back, like, why? Prove it, and you get a bit defensive about your dream and your passion. You go, but all these other people like it, why didn't they like it? And you have to accept that you cannot serve everyone, right? And you want to serve as many people as you can, but you can't serve everyone. You just do your best to serve the people you are serving, and try not to take too much of it to heart, and balance that versus setting up a system where other people are taking care of it. So you have customer support people and engineering people. I'm talking about prototyping. A lot of our stuff is software based. So if somebody says, hey, I have trouble doing this, then that can go to a customer service person, to our tech guys, to our software guys. And then they come back to me and go, hey, we had some feedback from John in Sydney, and we've made this little change. We want to roll it out to some audiologists to test it. Can we get your go-ahead? I'm like, bang, absolutely, because that's what it's all about. Making these little changes, keeping on top of it. Like I said, luxury range, street range, and pivot for COVID. I mean, my word, we've all had to pivot for COVID, right? But yeah, that side of it is really interesting, how you balance that feedback, especially the first time, and for everyone on your journey now, the first time you say, hey, I think this is a good idea, just take 2 deep breaths before you do it and get on with it. Because worst case, it sucks. And if enough people think it sucks, do something different, unless you really, really want it. You got to really want it. And if all the people you trust them around is like, oh, I don't know, man, then you got to think, okay, obviously the way I'm trying to do it is what's wrong. It's never going to be the problem you're trying to solve that's wrong. It just might be that the avenue you've chosen isn't getting it done with either the people you're asking or the people you think might be doing it. But if it's 10 people and they're all friends and family and they trust it and they're going to tell you honestly, because that's really important. There's nothing worse than someone going, absolutely, that's $1 million idea, get on with it, kiddo, and then nobody buys it because no one's giving you real honest feedback. Don't lose sight of the dream. Like, don't lose sight of the problem. Just have a think about how you're getting there and your chosen approach, because that's what that critique is based on. What do you like? What do you don't like? How can I make it better? And if everyone's like, it's just a dud. It's not like, why? What are you doing? Yeah, okay. Well, it's not that suicide prevention is a problem. Yeah. It's, how I'm doing it and whether people are going to open their wallets, because that has to be at the core of it.
We have a bit of a saying in the program that you should hold your problem tightly and your solution lightly, because it's not the problem that is the problem, but sometimes it's your dogged determination, I think ego sometimes, wrapped around the solution that you think is the best. But if you stay true to the problem, then you're able to iterate that solution so that it services the community or the problem or the people or what the purpose that you're trying to build around that organisation. I want to finish off with one last question, because time always seems to fly when I chat to you guys. But Makara, one thing that I have loved about watching the evolution of Mixed Chai over the last 7 months was a phone call that I got from you a couple of months ago, where you actually picked up the phone and you rang everybody that had purchased your chai get feedback. And I mean, I got off the phone, and I mean, we have a social friendship now, but I did think when I got off the phone to you, man, that's a really scary thing to do, because you don't know what people are going to say on the other end of the phone. And I really caught myself after that phone call and sat back and went, man, do I have the courage to do that? To ring every single teacher or student that I've worked with and say, hey, what did you think? And I'm not sure, and we have surveys obviously for our students at the end of, I got told I had super hype hair in the last stream that we did, which I think might be the coolest piece of feedback I've ever had. But I realized how brave that was to make those phone calls. It took time, but it also took a lot of bravery.
And it definitely was terrifying. So cold calling's not my thing. My business partner's far better at it, but we do this cool thing, and I think this is beauty of a team, is we push each other on our fears. So, public speaking, I love it, not her thing. So we try and swap. Normally she's a pro with cold calling, but I was like, I actually want to hear and thank the people. I called our first 100 customers just to say thank you. You backed us, and I wanted to see how they were going and why they were buying the chai. And it was probably the most enjoyable aspect of that week. I took about 20 a day and just sat and called. And if I didn't get through, I called again, which was scarier because you thought, oh, good, voicemail, just leave a voicemail. But, and before every call, I'm like, what am I doing? But I just dialed those numbers and just let it ring. And as soon as they said hello, I was like, you just have to say hello back. You can't, just freeze now. But I felt like I was going to vomit.
Just say hello back. That's got to be the mantra, right? If you do nothing else, just say hello.
Exactly. That's all I had to get myself to. And I'm so glad I did that, to the point where it's so enjoyable. And that fear subsided and it's getting easier. I still feel slightly nauseous at the thought, but each step gets easier. We're creatures of habit, right? So if you start creating these patterns on your fears, they slowly diminish, which is pretty cool.
And I'd love to tap into James and just ask one question around, obviously medicine and music are your fields, as far as areas of expertise, but you now run, I guess, what could be called a tech company. Did you get tech beforehand?
I've always been a geek. It was always, that was my job for the family. That was my job from when I was little, set up the TV, set up the computers, do the stuff, find out how to rip and burn the OC albums before anyone else and sell them at school, all that sort of stuff. It was sort of, back in the good old days.
Rip and burn, a phrase where young people today probably have no idea what that means.
We had to figure all this stuff out, and I always loved gadgets, and I think, it's really great hearing you talking about the partnership you have as well, because for me that's Alex, who you may or may not have seen already in the program. He's a big part of all the stuff you do, Nick, and I love that because he's so pragmatic. He's such a designer, he's such an engineer, he's one of the coolest, like most good-looking Newstead dudes. He just is that guy, and I'm just not. And it's really interesting, that balance and that back and forth, because he's so tech in that he can write it. You know, and I'm so tech in that I love it and I find the gadgets and the wiring, but it's just the problem that I like, and people are the most problematic thing on earth, which is why I did medicine. Like, if you want to understand problems, you know, trying to understand a human being is next level, but it all came down to trying to solve problems, and that connectivity and pushing each other. We do call blitzes in our office as well. We've got 10 people, and I get my engineers, I get everyone, and we'll call maybe 200 clinics to say thank you, how you doing, how can we help, what's going on, because I like my engineers that just sit there doing their Python, doing their code, doing the app, to hear these stories too, because we circulate them, but I like that everyone on the team can have a connection, and also, you know, we rah-rah each other up a bit, because obviously I don't mind making calls, like whatever, you know, this is kind of my baby, but the engineers, they don't really like it so much, and they'll make 20, 30 calls a day as well. And over that time, we've contacted an entire organization that we serve, and they've heard stories, they've heard problems, they've heard things, they've made notes. We can come at the end of it and go, we're doing a really good job here. Yeah. Or, hey, this was happening, that, and we tick off all the little like notes around making the company better, and then just go, how was it? And we're just going, this is amazing. Like, it's all so, there's so much feel good, and it comes from just working really hard for a really long time to get it right. But yeah, if you can solve problems, everything's easier.
Cool. We're going to take like a 2-minute break in a second before we launch into the last 10 minutes of this session. But I want to say a huge thank you to Makara and to James for joining us again today. And do reach out to their socials on Instagram and Facebook and connect, because you know, they really rally the community around them, and we're so thankful for their stories today. So thanks so much, guys.
Yeah, stories
And
save
as a
lives,
business
Nick.
thing
You
too.
know it.
Yeah. If you guys want to come play with us, just let me know. You know,
Open invite to the Audira office.
Yeah, everyone I
I'm there.
hired was an intern. So come play. If you've got guts and you like tech and you like solving problems, genuinely get in touch with me. And if you've got the courage to get in touch, I'll have the courage to say yes and come and play with us and see what it's all about.
Audira staff is going to go up about 200.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for your time, guys. We'll be back in 2 minutes. All right, team, welcome back for our last kind of like mini 10-minute session before we close out what we hope has been a really epic Future Fest experience for you guys. What I want to tap into now is kind of levels of launch. Like, our conversation with Makara and James were really about the fact that the first product that you put into market doesn't have to be the slickest, most expensive, the most professional, you know, with all the bells and whistles product in the world. That actually, like, almost getting it quickly in market and testing it and getting that feedback is so important to developing that end product that's really amazing. And so we've kind of broken down 3 levels of launch. And so the first level, or level 1 of launch, is what is the cheapest, fastest way to get your first customer. And what we're thinking about there is the purpose of getting the level 1 launch is basically to get rapid in-market feedback to prove that the idea is viable. Because if you spend less than $100 or less, and you can put the product in market and get your first, second, or third customer and get that really rapid feedback, they're going to tell you straight away if this is an idea that's worth pursuing, or perhaps if it's not. And you're only going to be $100 or less down. So level 1 is what is the cheapest, fastest way to get your first customer and get that rapid feedback you need to assess whether the idea is one worth pursuing, or whether you need to shelve that one and maybe go back and pursue another idea. Our level 2 launch is what's the most cost-effective way to get a better product to more customers. So what we're talking about here from a purpose point of view is to establish a customer base with a better product. So based off the feedback that we got from level 1, we're then looking at putting sort of that version 2.0 or 3.0 in market to test off more customers, to get more feedback on how good the idea is, or what small improvements could be made to that product or service to make it better. And what we're looking at here is a budget of less than $1,000. You could probably do it for half that, $500 or less. You want to spend the least amount of money in order to put a better product in market to more customers to test it. It shouldn't be the best product yet. It's just our better product. And finally, our level 3 launch. And this is after you've moved through level 1 and you've tested it really fast and dirty with like $100 or less. And then you've taken that feedback to put 2.0 into the world and you've gotten some more feedback. And then you've created this next product, this level 3 product or service. And this is what is the best way to get the best product to many customers. And so this is where you might be looking at, building websites or creating partnerships in stores. The purpose here is to run a financially sustainable business, okay? And your budget is, none, in a sense that it should be whatever you require in order to make the idea financially sustainable. And so this might be where you look at crowdfunding. So pre-selling, like what James did, like what Tanika did, actually drawing on your connections and the people around you to raise the money that you require to build that level 3 product. And we strongly suggest you go to Kickstarter again and check out some of the campaigns that are on there. Actually, you can see campaigns that have closed. So go and have a look at the Audira campaign and see what James and Alex and the team at Audira put forward as that Kickstarter campaign to get their level 3 product into market for their customers. Our last challenge for today is we want you to develop a level 1 launch for your idea. In other words, what is the quickest, dirtiest, cheapest way for you to get your first customer and get some rapid feedback on whether your idea is viable? We're going to give you 3 minutes. Design your level 1 launch. We'll see you in 3 minutes. Epic work, legends. So over the course of today, we've heard some incredible speakers. And as we said, definitely take the time to check out their socials and follow them so that you can watch their journey and give them some support. And we've taken you from ideating many, many problems to ideating lots of products and services, to picking a product or service that aligns with your problem, to developing a unique value proposition that might sit around your materials, the way that your customers access it, your features, or perhaps your purpose in the problem that you're trying to solve. And we've now developed a level 1 launch, something that you can throw into market to get that first customer and test the product. It's been a huge day. I'm going to run us through the last couple of messages before we finish up for FutureFest for today. And these is just to reiterate some things that you should remember off the back of our speakers today, and also our very quick, rapid proto-storm through the Entrepreneur's Odyssey. So there's a few things that you should know and remember. The first one is dig into your lived experiences and stuff that matters to you to design your solution. Really tap into who you are and the experiences that have collided to create the person that you are today, as well as the things that you're passionate about. If you love sport, tap into that. If you love music, tap into that. If you love tech and gaming, tap into that. Make sure you really use that as the launch pad for your designing. The next one is work with people who care about the same problem. So work with people who care about the same problem as you. And we heard that today when our young people were talking about teams. Lots of people were jumping at the opportunity to support them because they cared about the work that they were trying to do. The next one is remember the power of feedback. And this was especially apparent through our conversations with Lou and Leon and our conversations with also James and Makara around using the power of feedback to pivot their products and services to be the best version of that product or service for their customer or their client. The next one is you're going to fail. Your first idea is not going to be your best idea. In fact, you're going to fail often, and it's not going to be a sweet, scenic, linear route. But you'll find, like James in the Audira story, that if you keep moving forward and iterating off the back of that feedback, you're going to develop a product that you're going to be really proud of. And finally, ask for help. It's really important that if you need support on designing a brand or like marketing or your pitch and public speaking, feedback on your idea to make it better, how do you get into manufacturing, all of those things, ask for help. And you can do that through the Future Anything page. You can do that with the incredible teacher or teachers that are in the room with you. And on that note, I would love for you to turn to the teachers that are facilitating this program for you, and I want you to give them a massive round of applause, because not all education looks like this in the classroom, and your teachers at your school are incredible advocates for innovation and youth-led voice being embedded within curriculum. So give them a massive round of applause, ask them for help if you need it, and more than anything else, we want to leave you with this question. Thank you for joining us, and thanks for being a part of Future Anything. We're excited to see your incredible ideas that you apply for in our grand final. And more than anything else, we want to leave you with this question, which is, how are you going to bend the future?